I don't know. A lot of people view the Crusades as a bad thing, but this video says the Crusades were awesome, actually. Okay? Let's hear it.
In 2005, the film Kingdom of Heaven was released to the world. The film takes place during the major historical conflict between the Christian world and the Islamic world that we today call the Crusades. Beginning in 1096, Catholic Europeans embarked on quests to retake the Holy Land and spread the faith to new areas of the globe.
Yep.
You would think that in a historical drama like this, we would get a fair portrayal of both sides, with the nuances of the conflict being shown. We don't. The film portrays the Christian Crusaders as bloodthirsty barbarians, while their Islamic opponents are shown as intelligent and peaceful.
Yeah, and you know, that's pretty common in Hollywood films. It's really not it's not an it's not an exception. It's more of a rule than an exception. So yeah,
to be fair, Saladin was very highly respected even by Europeans. He was very highly respected.
That is true.
Now it should be said,
I'm not saying all of them were, but he was.
That Ridley Scott, the director of the film, is an atheist, so we can see why he deliberately decided to portray things this way. But regardless of Scott's motivation, the portrayal of the Crusades in Kingdom of Heaven reflects how they've been understood by a majority of Westerners for decades.
That's true. I think that the perspective that a lot of Americans have is that the Crusades were they were European aggression towards the Middle East. I think this is accurate.
Documentaries like the History Channel's Mankind, The Story of Us single out the Crusades as a uniquely evil chapter of human history.
I think of all the wars fought over religion, the Crusades belong in their own category.
It is
really? I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of crazy wars.
One of the most shameful undertakings ever embarked upon by our species.
So far.
In all of these cases, the same narrative is presented.
And I think actually I think the Crusaders were probably like this. I think this probably happened all the time. Is that you had guys that spent 10 years down in the Middle East and they were G's. They had power, they had authority, they were well known, they were powerful, and then you told them, hey, you've got to go back home and go be a potato farmer again. And this guy says, bro, what the fuck? Like, I used to lead a fucking team of 20 guys. We used to raid villages. I used to eat meat every day. Fuck this. I don't want to do that. Yeah.
Day, crazy Christians decided to attack the peaceful and enlightened.
I mean, it's so manifestly obvious that it was even the plot for Rambo, the First Blood. This has been the case ever since there have been cases.
In the Islamic world, just because they could. The events are held as a staple of why we need separation of church and state, and why Catholicism should have no place in government. We're led to believe that if Christians have power again, they'll start... It's
very obvious Catholicism does have a huge role in government. Like, I mean, the same way that, Muslim countries are generally, informed, their laws are informed by Sharia law and by their own culture, in America and in Europe, it's generally informed by Christianity. Not...
I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of separation between church and state in Europe and in the West overall. Maybe it's a little bit close. No, it's not closer in America. It's actually, there have been powerful forces driving this wedge between church and state. Some of them good, most not good. I think that there has been a powerful Jewish influence actually on this, so a lot of it has been really it has been coming from wrong sources, so maybe we would have had a bigger church and a stronger church and state connection if our countries weren't so infiltrated, parasitically possessed by certain forces, which I just call the Jews. So it's one of the things I like to talk about, but it's definitely connected to this topic.
Entirely, but to an extent.
Unnecessary wars of religion, just like the Crusades.
Yes.
But in reality, there are few events in history more misunderstood than the Crusades.
Really?
This is why I'm making this video.
Okay, let's see it.
The popular understanding of the Crusades is dead wrong, and I'm here to explain why.
All right, let's hear it.
In this video, you'll be finding out why the Crusades were not only morally justified, but were actually a historic achievement. Buckle up, because there's a lot to cover.
Wow!
Let's travel back in time to 600 AD.
It was a long time ago.
Roughly 500 years before the First Crusade. This is a map of the Christian world at that time. All the highlighted areas show where Christianity had spread and become the majority religion.
That's a lot.
Wait a minute, is that the Middle East and North Africa? Yes, it is. These
That's not a surprise at all. Yeah, of course.
two areas used to be Christian.
Yeah.
People today think of these as Muslim lands, but that was not always
No.
the case. It all began when Christianity spread far and wide after being legalized by Emperor Constantine the Great with the Edict of Milan. This led to the Christianization of both the Western and Eastern Roman Empire. Even as the western part of the empire fell to barbarians, Christianity remained, and most of the barbarians also converted.
Yeah.
So if that happened in
See
Europe,
that?
what happened in the Middle East and North Africa? In the mid-600s, Arab warlords sprang out of the Arabian Peninsula and began conquering everything in their path. They brought with them their own religion, Islam, and unlike European barbarians, they did not convert to Christianity. The Middle East at the time was dominated by two superpowers, the Christian Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantine Empire, and the Zoroastrian Sassanid Empire. Unfortunately for them both, they had just fought each other in a gigantic war lasting 25 years and had drained themselves of key resources. Because of this, neither was prepared for the invasions that hit them. The Byzantines lost all of Africa and the Levant, while the Sassanid Empire collapsed completely. The most important loss for the Christian world, though, was the loss of the Holy Land. By 900 AD, Islam had expanded, by conquest, all the way to France and southern Italy. Now, I'm not
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
going to moralize about this. Conquest and wars of expansion have been common all through history, and Islam followed in that same mold. However, Islam did take things a step further with its concept of jihad, or holy war. Muhammad was a conqueror who took slaves, and Islam has sought to emulate his example ever since.
This idea of jihads and, crusades, holy wars, it was sort of like a paradigm shift, It's like a, in terms of scale, the idea of having giant wars between religions, and it's like every power under that, sort of under, for example, Islam and Christianity, you have like a war, like a massive, almost not world war, but like a continental war. All of the Christian countries versus like all the Muslim countries, which is pretty scary, but also, in a way, it's also epic, but yeah.
As a side note, this is also why slavery has always been common in the Islamic world and continues to be practiced there to this very day. But regardless of the
I hear that a lot. They have slaves still.
morality of the Islamic conquests, they were, nonetheless, invaders who invaded the Christian world.
Damn.
Christians in conquered lands were second-class citizens, and many were taken as slaves. Christian inhabitants had to pay an enormous tax called the dhimmi tax, and their churches were often shut down. Because of Islamic policies, over the centuries, Christianity in the Middle East and North Africa shrunk from a large majority to a tiny minority. But it actually gets even worse.
How the Islamic escalation forced Christendom down?
During the days of
Is
the
this
Roman
true?
Empire, the Mediterranean Sea was a breadbasket of commerce and trade.
Yeah, sure.
The Romans had successfully stamped out piracy and created some of the safest waterways in the entire world. Islamic
This video is propaganda. Muhammad freed slaves? Well, it's probably both. I mean, it's probably they have slaves in some cases. They don't have slaves in other cases. That's probably what happened, realistically.
piracy brought all of this to an end. From bases in
Yeah, you
North
just gotta think
Africa
about
and
it.
the Middle East, they turned the Mediterranean into an unsafe hellhole. This crashed the European economy and made...
Wait, so you're telling me that all the way back then, they were going out and fucking with boats? And now they're still going out fucking with boats? This was literally over 1,000 years ago. They've been fucking with boats for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Been dealing with these guys fucking with boats. Oh my god.
Europe a miserable place for commerce for almost
It's what they
400
do, yeah.
years. Islam's so-called Golden Age came at Europe and Christianity's expense. This is the true reason that many consider the years 600 AD to 1000 AD a dark age for Europe.
Oh, that's 'cause of
It was
volcano.
literally cut off from the entire world and constantly under attack. It was in this hellish environment that Christendom finally started to have enough. The first rumblings for a crusade came in 846 when an Arabic expedition to Sicily sailed up the Tiber River and sacked St. Peter's in Rome. A synod in France called for Christian sovereigns to rally against the enemies of Christ.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And the Pope, Leo IV, offered a heavenly...
Wait, don't we have a Pope Leo now? And wasn't Blackwater asking the new Pope Leo for money so they can help stop the attacks of Christians in... Oh my god. Dude.
...or to those who died fighting the Muslims. But it was around 1000 AD when things really escalated on multiple fronts. In the west, the Islamic Caliphate of Cordoba in Iberia began expanding north. It conquered, burned, and enslaved its way through multiple Christian cities, including Barcelona and Leon. It was this expansion campaign that finally provoked the Christian kingdoms to launch the Reconquista to retake Iberia from Islam. But if things looked rough in Western Christendom, they were even worse in the East. In the late 900s, a Central Asian Muslim group called the Seljuk Turks began migrating into Anatolia.
The Turks!
In 1064, they completely conquered Armenia and sacked its capital, Ani.
Holy
shit. The city never recovered from this brutality and remains a ruin to this very day.
Wow.
Almost all of the Armenian population had to migrate southeast to Cilicia, creating an entire new kingdom called Cilician Armenia. In other words, Islam had made the Armenian homeland unlivable. The Turks then turned their expansion into the Byzantine Empire.
Yeah, Armenians really had it bad all throughout history. You hear like all this, even back then, but you know, later on you have all these Armenian genocides, and you know, then the Bolsheviks, it's just, they have the worst luck.
They began invading Western Anatolia in droves. The Byzantines tried to launch counterattacks, but were ultimately defeated at the Battle of Manzikert. After this defeat, Turks began mass migrating.
I didn't know this much shit happened before the Crusades. I had no idea about this.
Anatolia, completely altering its demographics. Another region of the Christian world had just become Islamic by force.
Man.
Here's how historian John J. O'Neill describes the circumstances. These, then, are the major political events which prefigured the First Crusade. Within a span of 35 years, the Turks had seized control of Christian territories larger than the entire region of France.
Holy shit.
And now they were a real threat to Europe.
That's
definitely
crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Europe. Now, by this point, the Byzantine Empire realized it was incapable of stopping the Islamic hordes by itself. Emperor Alexius Comnenus made a desperate appeal to the Pope and Western Christendom for aid. This was a major deal, because Eastern and Western Christendom had been in schism for almost 50 years by this point.
So they came together?
The Catholic Pope and the Orthodox Patriarchs did not get along, to put it lightly. But the issue had become that serious
they actually came... Damn.
That they were now willing to cooperate.
Damn.
What made matters even more
Deus Vult.
urgent was that Turks had begun persecuting Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land. Priests like Peter the Hermit, who would become one of the greatest advocates of the Crusades, witnessed this firsthand. This is the geopolitical environment that led to the First Crusade being called. Now, does it seem unreasonable when you get all this other context? This is what Catholic Europeans knew about Islam on the eve of the First Crusade. Muslims were enemies of Christ, they waged wars against non-combatants and enslaved women and children, and they had conquered all of Iberia, Anatolia, and threatened France and Italy. It was
True.
important that this all happened at the turn of the first millennia. By this time, the elites of Europe were finally starting to become much wealthier and better educated. They were developing a much stronger grasp of history and world affairs. Europe was safer and more interconnected than any time since the Roman Empire. They were beginning to
pretty good.
truly understand just how much damage Islam had done to the Christian world, and how much of a civilizational threat it still represented. All the pieces were now in place for the Crusades to be launched.
So did the Pope actually just... Did he... I don't know how this
In
happened, really.
1095, the moment had arrived. Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade to retake the Holy Land.
So Damn. So the Pope actually called for the Crusade.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Oh, fuck.
And drive back Islam. It would be the first of many. An excerpt from Urban's crusade speech reads, Your brethren who live in the East are in urgent need of your help, and you must hasten to give them the aid which has been promised them. The heathens have killed many, and they have destroyed churches and devastated the Greek Empire. If you permit them to continue with impunity, the faithful of God will be much more widely attacked by them. On this account, I, or rather the Lord, beseech you as Christ's heralds to
Bro.
Pretty awesome,
publish this
actually.
everywhere, and to
Yeah,
persuade all
pretty
people
awesome.
of whatever rank to carry aid promptly to those Christians. Let therefore hatred depart from among you. Let your quarrels end. Let wars cease. And let all dissensions and controversies...
So they just said stop fighting amongst each other and just go over there and kill them?
Yeah, pretty much. That's what
I mean, that usually works, to be fair.
slumber. It's important to point out how Pope Urban's speech emphasized not only the defense of Christendom, but also the end of internal wars between Christian
consolidation.
kingdoms. The Pope envisioned an
Based.
international brotherhood of Catholics who fought not each other, but their external threats.
I hear that guy's Catholics, not Protestants.
In any case, the call for crusade was extremely well received. The news spread through all of Europe like wildfire. Tens of thousands of faithful Catholics all across Europe answered the Pope's call. Lowly
Yeah.
peasants, ambitious knights, even kings. French, English, Flemish, German, people from all walks of life and all nationalities were inspired to fight for Christendom.
Damn.
It's not really appreciated how much of an accomplishment that this alone was.
Well, I think it probably makes sense in the context, right? Because these people were having their homelands attacked, and like, I think that there's something that's going to go beyond just the religion. Whenever you're being invaded by an occupying force, you're going to generally be against that no matter what. Even if the occupying force is in some way benevolent or reasonable, you're still going to have people that will resist against it because they don't want to deal with it. Like now, well, in some cases, yeah. Sounds familiar? Yeah, it's common enemy, right?
Yeah, definitely sounds
Exactly.
It's
familiar.
really something entirely unique in human history. The Catholic Church had created a multinational network that united Europeans of all stripes and ethnicities under a common faith with common goals. So many different Europeans being united by one religion and engaging in a civilization-wide struggle had not happened before and has not happened since.
God damn. Yeah, I didn't realize how historic this was, how big of a deal this was.
Catholicism achieved what hundreds of other religions and ideologies could not. And perhaps this is why our modern secular system demonizes the Crusades.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. So, you know, this the idea of the crusade, the unity of it, it's like uniting under Christ, under your religion, you know, and having power. There's a great deal of power behind, you know, unity. So some of the people don't want that.
The voice.
Now, did every crusade always go the best it could have gone?
No, I bet there were tons of crusaders that were awful, right? It's the same as any war. I mean, any army.
No, and you know, the Crusades didn't even work as well. You know, they didn't even work that well in some ways. Well, they were successful in part, but they didn't end up being successful. But that's not what matters in the end, because, you know, it's just the act of rebellion that is creates the foundation for something greater. And of course, that's what started this shift of the tide towards like European prosperity down the line.
You're going to have guys that are awful and terrible that are inside of that group. I mean, that's not really anything that's unique or special. It's just common sense. Of course that's what's going to happen.
No, of course not. Some crusades were huge successes, like the Reconquista, while others were dismal failures, like the Fourth Crusade. But even the failures are understandable in context. Crusaders were going halfway across the world to fight unfamiliar enemies on their own home turf. The logistics of the Crusades alone were a monumental undertaking.
Yeah, that shit's hard to do.
Despite all these challenges, the Christian forces still often came out on top. The First Crusade could really only be qualified as a roaring success. Crusaders defeated almost every Muslim army they encountered and captured Jerusalem.
Wow.
For the first time in hundreds of years, the Holy Land was back under Christian control.
I read somewhere that the
pretty
last
awesome.
time that like a Muslim force had a victory against a Christian force in Europe was actually with Saladin. Like that was the last time that it happened, even up to now. Like that, it's kind of crazy. It's incorrect. I don't know if it's true or not, but like, yeah, it's hard to say.
I don't think this one's true. It's a pretty big stretch. It's probably, this is probably not true. It's almost definitely not true.
The First Crusade also established crusader states that would remain in the Middle East for another century. One crusade I personally like was the Sixth Crusade. Jerusalem had fallen back into Muslim hands, but they had started to fight each other in a civil war. Emperor Frederick II of the Holy Roman Empire negotiated a peaceful transfer of Jerusalem back into Christian rule. Jerusalem was retaken without a single drop of blood being spilled.
Oh, that's
a
nice.
decisive diplomatic victory, even if the Muslims would eventually take it back. As you can tell, during this time period, it was hard for just about anybody to hold on to Jerusalem for long. In the end, the Crusades secured Christendom's western flank and bought its eastern flank another 300.
Who's controlling Jerusalem right now? I actually don't even know. Who's controlling it?
Jews.
Israel. So the Muslims and the Christians fought over this and fucking died. Millions of them died for this shit. And neither of them have this. Israel has the Jewish people have it now? Israel has it now? Is that right?
Yeah.
So all this was for fucking nothing.
Exactly.
They got third partied. Wow.
Everyone
That's
got
crazy.
Jewed, bro. It's pretty insane. Yeah.
100 years. It wasn't until the emergence of the Ottoman Empire in the 1300s that Islam once again threatened Europe. But even when that happened, Crusaders
time.
once again went out to stop them. The Crusade of Nicopolis and the Crusade of Varna are two big examples of this. While they didn't succeed in stopping the Ottomans, they did show that Christendom was still capable of uniting to fight common threats in the name of God. And in the end, 300 years later in the 1600s, Ottoman power would be broken by what was basically a crusade.
Ooh,
The
the
Christian
Winged
Holy
Hussars.
League of Austria, Poland, Venice, and Russia united to defeat the Ottomans and drive them back from Europe. Despite all of this, some people say the Crusades failed. But did they? Europe was Christian when the Crusades were launched, and it's still majority Christian today, 1,000 years later, although it is secularizing due to modernist ideologies. Ironically, it's only after the Pope lost his power to call crusades that Christianity started to decline.
Well, who said the Pope can't call a crusade? Who decided that? Yeah, who just...
Yeah, and Europe is having problems, with the immigration and all of that stuff, which of course is mostly funded by secular Jews. So I think that both Muslims and Christians are now facing a bigger, possibly uniting issue, which is Jewish supremacy.
decided that the Pope can't do crusades anymore? The Pope? So he could just change his mind. Yeah, so like theoretically you could have another crusade. Like this could happen.
Yeah.
In Europe. But when we look back at these events, history shows it's not a shameful chapter of Catholic history, but the total opposite. The Christian world defended itself and spread the faith abroad after hundreds and hundreds of years of abuse. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the Crusades were awesome indeed. This has been
damn.
Pax, and thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos, please consider supporting the channel.
Good.
Also, leave a
Good
comment.
I'm sorry,
content.
but like I cannot get over the irony of the Muslims and the Christians fucking fought and killed each other
Yeah.
over Jerusalem for like 1,000 years, and now the Jews have it. Neither of us have it. It's the Jews that have it now. That's crazy.
And letting me know your thoughts on everything.
Yeah, it is. The comment is right. It's because of World War II, which was basically won by the international jury. The Christians didn't win it. The Muslims didn't win it. It's the international jury that won.
As always, I will see you
Wow.
in the next video.
Yeah, I mean, definitely probably a bit of a propaganda video. I mean, I'm sure, you know, it seems kind of obvious that, like, you know, there's one perspective that he's trying to give. But it's interesting to hear it, right? I mean, and I think that there's probably, like, the reality is that it's probably a little bit in between, right? That's what I would kind of assume. Churchill gave it to them. Yeah, what about Space Marines? Well, I don't know. There's the video. Give it a like, guys. And World War I was a religious war. I don't know about that. You should watch the video of Epic History. It's incredibly biased, and most of it was wrong, and it was nice to fit his narrative. Listen, I bet there's probably tons of Muslims that are like, no, the Crusades were awful. Tons of Christians said no, they were great. Like, yeah, wow, big surprise. The guys that are, you know, they're justifying the action that is on their side. Yes, I would have never expected that. I think that there's probably some, I mean, it's the same as anything else, right? Where it's like there's probably a degree of justification. There's a,
No, I wouldn't just you know, black and white say, you know, oh, Crusades were great or they were horrible or anything like that. It's really not something that you can easily say. But in terms of were they good for Christianity and Europe, yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. And you know, to the same degree, you could say that probably, you know, the jihads were good for the Muslims, because, you know, this is sort of like uniting under a common banner, and so it strengthens the culture, society, whatever, you know, the connection, religion, whatever.
degree of opportunism, and there's a degree of just like geopolitics that go involved with this, right? But I do think that it seems like the Crusades were not a universal, like one-dimensional moral evil. I think that seems to be the case.
Yeah.
It's not that they were necessarily always good, but it was not one-dimensionally evil.